Okay, people love me, and tons of people find me charming, so.
Oh.
So what's up, people, and welcome to the part 6 discussion of Undone. So yeah, we're starting to get closer to the end of the season. I didn't realize that there were only 8 episodes in this season. I thought there were going to be 12. And yeah, coming towards the end, I do admit I am going to miss watching these episodes, because I do really like this series a lot. And watching part 6, I have to admit that this one doesn't disappoint at all. This was really good. And what's interesting about this episode is, although the first 5 episodes were written by Kate Purdy and or Raphael Bob Waksberg, this one was written by Lauren Otero. And so you would worry that there was going to be a sudden shift in the way the story's being written. But I have to admit, I found this episode really, I guess the best word to say it is beautiful. It was really touching in many ways. And that's interesting because of the fact that as far as the plot was concerned, it was going further and further into the mystery, of the murder or the death of the father. But why I say that it is such a touching and beautiful episode is because you get to see once again a completely different view of these stories or these episodes, and I really like that. Maybe even more so than the plot is the way these episodes are shown. And it's such a creative and touching way that I really, really like the series, even beyond just the plot. I mean, the plot's interesting, and it is nice to see how this mystery is going to go along. But to be honest, it's not the highest priority for me. Once again, as I said from the beginning, a lot of this has to do with the human interaction. And we've seen it through many different perspectives, especially, between Alma herself and her tensions that she has in the beginning, her interactions with her dad, her interactions with, Sam. And this one is interesting because of the fact that we get to see her interaction with Sam and her mother once again, but this time we get to see it from their perspective. And my gosh, the writer did it so well. It was such a nice introduction start of the episode when they showed a scene with regards to Alma's mother after the death of the father. So Alma's still a child, and it's not through Alma. We are just basically seeing it as a third party. And it's a very short episode, or not a very short episode, very short scene, but it's extremely impactful, at least it was for me. Because of the fact that, in part 5 we start learning, just what sort of person Alma's mother was. I will repeat it here once again. She was the type that liked to play it safe. And so she would often get very stressed over anything that was going beyond the normal. And she always wanted to be in the normal. And she wanted to have this nice, safe, relaxing life. And the tension that happened between, Alma's mom and Alma's dad was that, of course, the dad was the exact opposite. He was the adventurer. And in some ways, he had an objective because of the fact that, of course, since Alma's grandmother, or, Alma's father's mother, was similar to Alma in being able to see and be clairvoyant, and was accused of being insane, Alma's father took it upon himself to try to prove that there was something out there. And of course, he went on this adventure, which of course stressed the mom. And there was a significant amount of tension between the two. Why I found that opening scene was so touching and important was that this character, who was hoping for a normal life, who was probably telling her husband or Alma's father, please be careful, don't go out in the adventuring, we want to stay in the normal, went out on the adventuring, and of course got himself killed. And so this lady who wanted to keep a nice, safe, happy family suddenly got thrown into the situation where she was not in the normal. And this was not out of her choice. This was out of the consequence of the things that the father did. And now she had to raise 2 children by herself. And because of that, this one lady who wanted to play it safe, and of course being married to a professor, would have been able to somehow play it safe if the father played it safe, now is stuck forced to living out in the extreme. In that one scene, you could tell that she is a very caring person in the sense that although she got stressed by being thrown out in the extreme, the biggest stress that came from her was not about worrying about what happened to her, but what happened to the kids. She was praying that being out in vulnerable in this world was not going to come down on the kids. And so seeing that, you get to learn a lot of things. You basically start understanding why there is a tension between Alma and her mom. Because Alma is very much like her dad. She is in the outlier, right? And here is the mom being thrown out into the outlier and trying desperately to protect the children. And here is one daughter who is wanting to dance at the edge of the cliff. And so she goes out of her way to try to control her, pull her back in. And of course Alma rebels. And that has constantly caused tension between the two of them, and you start understanding some of the things that happened in the beginning parts of the series just from this one simple scene. And what's interesting is as we keep on going, as the series episode opens up, you get to see Alma's mother away from Alma, when she is living her life. And you start understanding that she is a compassionate person who actually supports and gives help to a lot of other people around her. And she becomes an influence of joy to a lot of other people. And so she by herself shows this softer side, this caring side, if somehow she was able to live in the normal. And of course, every time Alma walks in, why there is such a great tension is she gets dragged out of the normal again into Alma's world, and that again once more causes tension. And so we got to see a lot of this thing, this interaction from Alma's side, from episode 1 to 5. But now we get to see things from the mother's side. And you start understanding why the mother is acting this way. And you start feeling, somewhat compassionate towards her, because you're understanding that under the circumstances that she got thrown into, she's trying to do the best possible to live and take care of the children in the way she believes is the right way to do it. In addition to that, we do see a lot more of Sam as well, and we get to see things from Sam's side as well. And if you recall in the last episode, Alma confessed about her powers and everything, hoping that Sam would understand. And you saw a puzzled look on Sam's face, and that of course brought a tear out of Alma's eye, indicating just how sad she was that Sam couldn't understand. And so, of course, from your side, you're feeling bad about Alma, and you're kind of upset with Sam because of the fact that he just doesn't get it. Until you start looking at it from his perspective. You see, up till now, we saw Alma talking with her dad, and all these things happening, and Sam's trying to, just go along with it. Although he just doesn't get it. And of course, from our side, it's like, why don't you get it? Why don't you understand, Sam? Why don't you understand what Alma's going through? And then you get to see it from Sam's side, where you see Alma just standing in the middle of nowhere, speaking to the air. And he has to witness all of this and pretend like nothing is going wrong. Right? And so all he sees is all of this strange interactions that are going on, which we finally see from his eyes, where he doesn't get to see all the images that Alma sees. He doesn't get to see the situations that she travels through timeless. He just gets to see her reactions to all of that. And he doesn't understand what's going on. Why should he? I mean, would you understand somebody just staring up at the sky and shouting at the sky, which we think is she's shouting to her dad and arguing with her, but he's just seeing her shouting right at the, into the open air. And so he's trying to get along because, of course, he cares for Alma. In the beginning of this episode, he starts supporting her by starting to investigate her father's death himself. And this goes into a lot of the mystery, and you start opening up a lot of the clues that are in the mystery. And I'll go into just two of these things, and you should look into the episode yourself if you want to get more of the other clues. One is that there is some dark, shady company that is involved in this whole thing and was originally funding Alma's father's research. And from everything we see in the episode, we start getting this indication that this company feels like a cross between Stark Industries and the Umbrella Corporation, which sounds extremely frightening by itself, right? And so they start investigating into that, and they also realize that during the night of when the father was killed, a little bit before that time, there was a break-in into the father's laboratory. And so they start hunting into that, and through it all, Sam experiences firsthand, Alma's clairvoyance. He gets to see a situation where Alma is clairvoyant. And there is some puzzlement to that. And I'll go into that a little bit later. But in any case, this keeps on moving forward, and they're trying to investigate into that, and they start realizing that one of the people who was suspected to have, or who was questioned during that break-in, was the assistant's boyfriend, the father's assistant's boyfriend, who they always thought was maybe he was potentially in on some situation when they found out she had a boyfriend. Now, of course, if you recall, there was that potential thought that maybe the father was having an affair with the assistant, which the father denies. And so was there any tension between the assistant and the boyfriend? And so, yeah, yada, yada, yada. So with the boyfriend becoming questioned, that of course opens up the situation about what happened. Why was the boyfriend questioned? And so they go and confront the boyfriend. And during that time, since the boyfriend lashes back at them, and of course Alma's determined to find out what really happened, Sam is starting to see that there may be some danger. Now, we understand that Sam's personality is very similar to Alma's mother. He just tends to want to go along with it and wants to be on the safe side, doesn't want to confront because confront can become dangerous. And so there's the one side of Sam who wants to support Alma as much as possible, and there's the other side of Sam who's starting to freak out over the fact that this whole confrontation is starting to get, danger signal, red flag for him. And so now there is this conflicting persona that's coming out, which Alma, of course, starts seeing as well. And so this is moving forward in a very interesting manner. And the final thing I would love to talk about is the church that Alma's mother goes to. And there's a pastor there, of course, and she gets along very well with the pastor. And the pastor, is worried about Alma. And initially, of course, Alma's mother, receives his support because of the fact that she's telling him that something is very strange with Alma. And later on, I won't go into the details, Alma eventually meets up with the mom and joins the services that the pastor is giving for that evening. And during that conversation, of course, Alma mentions that it wasn't her that created the prescription and she was refusing to take it. It was that the doctor gave her the option to take the prescription medicine for her potential, hallucinations or dementia or whatever they think that she has. And she refused to do so. So it was her choice that she can opt out of it, according to the doctor. And it was her mother who, behind her back, filled that prescription. So that was something the pastor didn't understand. And when he heard about it, he, of course, sided with Alma, saying it is her life. She has to live it on her own, and we have to respect her freedom from that. And, of course, the mother gets really upset about that situation. And you really see the upset situation that the mother gets to, considering the fact that she is a very traditional person. And I think she is a very religious person as well. And so she and the pastor typically get along. But when she said, you have to understand, Alma speaks to somebody who's not really there. And the pastor responds back and says, well, to be honest, we all speak to somebody who a lot of people think is not really there. And when she bites back and says, that's something different, you don't understand, it was a very interesting way of saying it because of the fact that you start wondering at that certain instant, was she kind of taking what the pastor was saying almost as not a lie, but something that's superficial, the belief as being superficial, that, Alma's trying to pretend, Alma's really thinking that there's somebody there, and that's worrisome. But when you talk to who you believe in, and that person is not that person, that being, right, the omnipotent being is not there, well, that's just superficial anyway, so that's not the same thing. Maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, but it felt like from the pastor's side, he almost felt a little bit disappointed because of the fact that, of course, he believes truly in that belief. And so when he said that, of course, we all speak to the being that's typically a lot of people consider is not there, he actually believes that. And when she said that's something different, she almost implied Alma actually believes that there is really some person there and it's not like you sort of situation. It almost felt like he was extremely hurt by that statement. And what's interesting is later, and why I say this story is really well written, is the next day we see the mother. And of course, she doesn't attend church after that point. But it's not out of anger. It's out of disappointment. You see that she has almost given up on this entire situation. She's almost at wit's end. And she's seriously disappointed in life and possibly everything else, including herself, in the situation. So this isn't a matter of anger and wanting to, be vengeful to Alma or to the pastor. she's just finally given up and feels extremely lost from the situation that happened the night before. And so I found this to be very touching because you could see it from the pastor's side, you could see it from Alma's side, you could see it from the mother's side, and depending upon who you're looking through, you see different perspectives and you understand why each one of these people is feeling the way they are. And I found that to be extremely heartening because of the fact that typically, you only see the one-sided nature of a lot of these cinemas, right? I mean, it's you or me, there's the main character, protagonist, and there is a reason why the antagonist is called the antagonist, right? Because that person is conflicting. And from our side, since we often relate to the protagonist, we tend to side with the character. But in this case, since we're seeing it from all three perspectives, it's a little bit hard, and you start understanding the perspective of why each character is feeling the way they do. And sometimes they may lash out unknowingly just because they have kind of been pushed into a corner and can't help but do the lashing, right? You could understand it from Alma's perspective, you could understand it from Alma's mother's perspective, and you could understand it from the pastor who didn't lash out but is trying to resolve the situation in a peaceful manner. So yeah, I found part 6 to be extremely beautiful because of the fact that you get to go into the souls of so many people, and from their perspective you understand exactly why they're trying to do the things they do. You understand why Sam is confused because, you get to see what he is seeing, where Alma is arguing into thin air. And she is going headlong into confronting people and being aggressive with people for things that he's not sure if they're even true or not, right? And then you get to see it from Alma's perspective, where Sam is starting to distance himself, and that's starting to feel like maybe this person really doesn't believe. You get to see it from the mother's perspective of trying to desperately keep the family together and protect the family, despite the fact that the people in the family are starting to lash back at her. And you're, of course, trying to see the pastor's side, who's trying to resolve these things in a peaceful manner, and the people he cares for starting to get very tense and aggressive depending upon which side that he stands in. Does he stand with the mother? Does he stand with the daughter? In many ways, whichever way he stands, he's destined to lose in some situation. And so I found episode 6 to be extremely heartening. Once again, I really do like each one of these episodes. Each one has a very interesting and unique aspect to it. And although, a good amount of the plot focused on the mystery of things going forward, what really made this exciting and, interesting for me was the interactions between the people and the way the scenes kept on shifting from one perspective to the other. And I'm not sure if you felt the same way when you looked at part 6, but that was my interpretation, and because of that, I found this episode to be very, very good once more. And so, once again, I am really enjoying Undone. And for whatever perspective I have, I am going to continue to watch this, and I look forward to seeing what new things will come out in chapter 7 or episode 7, because episode 7 is again written by a completely different person, Joanna Callow. So it'll be interesting to see how that writer's perspective will potentially give something new to the story. And I hope, considering the fact that these 6 episodes have been so good, I hope episode 7 will live up to the previous episodes. And so I'll continue with Undone, and I'll bring up the next video once I see the next episode, and I hope you join me at that time. And until then, happy drama watching, happy anime watching, and as always, Jaya, nice day everyone.